All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Panthers and Falcons game. Falcons winning that game 38-20. So let's get into the specifics of that game. So, the Falcons, after that epic Thursday night matchup against the Buccaneers, what was this encore performance going to be? Now, the Panthers, I know Andy Dalton has kind of made, the offense look a little bit better. But, the Panthers, after that first win, against the Raiders, they have not won a game since. So, they've kind of reverted back to their losing ways. But, they did put up more points, believe it or not, than they did in that Thursday night matchup. But Kirk Cousins didn't throw for 500 yards. How many passing yards did he have in this game? He only had 225, one touchdown, no interceptions, 19-30. What the Falcons did do, however, and this is something that's encouraging for fantasy owners of a certain player, Bijan Robinson, they relied on the running game in this matchup. So they had almost 200 yards rushing, 198 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. And believe it or not, Bijan Robinson wasn't the leading rusher. Tyler Algier was. He had 18 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown. Bijan had 15 carries for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Drake London continues to have a good year. 6 receptions for 74 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 70. Darnell Mooney, 3 for 38. Ray McLeod, 3 for 30. He had a fumble in this game. A couple of interceptions off of Andy Dalton here. No sacks by the Falcons defense. And then for the Panthers, Andy Dalton went 26 of 38, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Chuba Hubbard had 18 carries for 92 yards. Dalton had 21 yards rushing. Miles Sanders only had 1 yard on the ground. Deontay Johnson, who has been part of trade talks, so we'll see if that ends up happening. That was another receiver that could possibly be traded before the deadline. Maybe, maybe not. 78 yards receiving and a touchdown. Panthers defense, no sacks. So no sacks in this game. But, the Falcons are starting to put it together. Now, they actually, right now, are 3-0 against their division so far, which that puts them in great positioning. Right now, they are tied with the Bucs at 4-2, but that win against the Bucs, keeps them in first place for the moment. And you look at the Falcons' schedule coming up. They have the Seahawks on Sunday at home, and the Seahawks defense isn't great, hasn't been playing well, so I like the Falcons to win that game. And then they got the Buccaneers again in Tampa, home against Dallas, at New Orleans, at Denver. Then you got the bye week, and then home against the Chargers. Chargers got a good defense, so that could be tough. At the Vikings, Kirk Cousins homecoming. At the Raiders, home against the Giants. At Commanders, and then home against the Panthers. So it's a doable schedule. And, I did pick the Falcons to win the division before the year started, and I think that still is going to be the case. But, I think they're still trying to put things together offensively. But, it's definitely gotten better. These last 2 games, like I said, they won in different ways. Against the Buccaneers, it was Kirk Cousins throwing the ball a ton of times and passing for over 500 yards. This game, the Panthers are not as good as the Buccaneers, so, their game plan was a little bit different. And you relied on the running game, and, Kirk Cousins did his thing. He found Drake London for a touchdown. So, the Falcons, slowly but surely, they're putting it together. And I think they're in a much better position than they were, in the beginning of the year, where I was like, oh, my man, this offense, is it ever going to start clicking? But it has. It definitely has. I think probably the bigger concern, because once the Falcons get healthy, I know they were missing some offensive linemen, but once you get healthy on that side of the ball, and you give Kirk Cousins the protection that he needs, you're good there. The defense not being able to get after the quarterback, no sacks in this game, is something to keep an eye on. I don't think this Falcons defense is bad, but definitely would like to see them put more pressure on the quarterback. They're getting turnovers, which you like to see. Maybe they're in the market to get another pass rusher. But Yeah, that would probably be, I guess, something to focus more on is the defense and um, trying to get that going. Like I said, trying to get after the quarterback. And then, as for the Panthers, I mean, they're 1-5. They take on the Commanders this week, so I don't really like their chances there. Then at Denver, home against the Saints, actually, not home against the Giants. It's a home game for them, but they'll be in Germany for that game. They go on the bye, week 11. And then they take on the Chiefs at home, the Buccaneers at home. They're in Philly, home against the Cowboys, home against the Cardinals, at Tampa, against the Buccaneers, and then at the Falcons. So, yeah, not a lot of wins there for the Panthers, if any. Um, but actually, good news for them. Another running back that could be coming back soon is Jonathan Brooks, their rookie running back. He could come back and give the Panthers fans a little bit of excitement there to see him play. But yeah, it's just team's not good, and you wonder, could they possibly go back to Bryce Young? Is that on the table? Probably is. I mean, we did see him in mop up time, or in garbage time, whatever you want to call it, against the Bears because they wanted to get Andy Dalton out of there. Because of the offensive line not being able to protect the quarterback against the Bears, but it's like, well, why are you putting Bryce Young in that situation? It's didn't really. If and I forget who said this, but if they would have just not have said that, they wouldn't have gotten, Panthers wouldn't have gotten blasted for that move. But the fact that you come out and say, yeah, we just wanted to get Andy Dalton out of there against it's like, so you want to put Bryce Young in there and see him get knocked around. That's. But it's like that with the Patriots. The Patriots don't have a good offensive line, and they did the reverse. Well, actually, no. They didn't really do the reverse. They took out the veteran and put in the rookie against the offensive line. But, I mean, I guess it's different because, they had Bryce Young starting. They benched him. They put in Andy Dalton, and then they put him in against the Bears at the end. Whereas the Patriots, you're starting Jacoby Brissett, and now you're putting in Drake May. And Drake May's in his first year. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's, just get better offensive line. Get a better offensive line. I mean, it's easier said than done, but, Panthers got a lot of work to do. I think the Patriots, at least they're heading in the right direction. The Panthers, I don't know what direction they're heading in, but, Andy Dalton is not the future of this team. And it doesn't look like Bryce Young is either. So, I mean, if they get the top pick, I mean, if you're going to draft a quarterback again, you got to get better surrounding pieces, and they at least tried to do that to an extent, drafting a receiver. They traded for Deontay Johnson. They drafted a running back. They did sign a couple of offensive linemen in the offseason, but it's still the same thing. And I think the defense needs a lot of work too. So, yeah, they Panthers got a lot of work to do. And we'll see where they end up picking. I mean, you got a lot of teams that are at one win right now. Between the Browns, the Jaguars, the Panthers, the Patriots, it's we'll see who ends up. We'll see how the draft order ends up settling itself out by the end of the year. But yeah, there's bad teams. The Panthers are one of them. So, but Falcons, they pick up another win. Like I said, 3-0 against the NFC South, and that's big. That's huge, especially if it's between it looks like it's going to be between them and the Buccaneers. The Saints now with all the injuries and Derek Carr getting hurt. After this hot start that they had, they look like they're falling out of it. Panthers, never really had a chance. It's going to come down to those two teams, and that's what makes that game in Tampa. Not this week, but next week, it's going to be huge. The Bucs got to get even, and they beat the Saints at least. And that overtime loss a couple weeks ago in Atlanta was huge. Because then the Bucks, they'd be 5-1 right now, and the Bucks, they got a really tough schedule coming up. Because they play the Ravens, they play the Chiefs, they play the Niners. They're playing these first place teams. Well, I mean, in the AFC, it's one of those things where they're playing, the first, I guess, the first place team of the North, because that's where the Ravens finished last year, and then they're playing the Chiefs. But actually, well, yeah, because then they're playing the AFC West this year. So, yeah, not easy. Going up against the Ravens and the Chiefs, and then you got the Niners because you finished in first place, one of the first place NFC teams. So, at least 2 of those 3 games are at home, but they're going to be tough games. So, and the Falcons, they got to take advantage of that with the Bucks going up against some tough teams, some tough opponents. Got to take advantage of that and keep stacking up the wins. And I think once they get to their bye week, that's really going to help this team. And yeah, I mean they're in a good position right now, a better position than the Bucks. So we'll see how it all pans out. But to get this running game going for the Falcons is encouraging. And the pass catchers like Drake London. I know Mooney had a quiet game, but he's been good so far. Kyle Pitts, at times has gotten it going, but you're looking for that consistency, and I guess it's just not going to be there. And Ray McLeod as a number 3 wide receiver, he hasn't been bad either. He makes plays for them. So I know the fumble, you don't want to see that, but yeah, I mean their receiving core is okay. I think that's something that maybe they could address that at the deadline, or if not, that's something that's a position I think of need in the offseason. I know they did trade for Rondale Moore when they did a Rondale Moore Desmond Ridder swap, and Rondale Moore got hurt unfortunately, and he's out for the year. But that's definitely something that they're going to have to address in the offseason or at the deadline. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. We are going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about the game from last Thursday. We'll talk about the Niners' performance against the Seahawks and whether or not they, this is the start of something good for them with some of the tough losses that they've had so far this year. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.